Well, I hope you enjoyed that discussion of some of the different ground conditions. That can be really helpful out on the golf course. We still have a long way to go, though, and I want to talk about how to make use of your swing to alter it just a little bit for the different lies, the uneven lies, uphill and downhill, out of the light rough. Now, when it comes to this shot, there's something that's going to be very important for us to take note of for some of the uneven lies, and that is when the club is approaching, I want you to remember that to have the right angle of approach, it's still going to be above the ground at this point. Now, I'm not going to give it an exact amount. I just want you to remember that it has to still be in the air at that point. It's going to be a big factor when we go into some of the uneven lies. When it approaches in this fashion, it's going to help me to make the solid contact that I need. As I mentioned, I don't want to have any scooping here where I try to lift the ball up out of there. A very common mistake on this shot is to go ahead and try to scoop it up out of the grass. That's disaster in this situation. You have to go ahead and let the club pinch down on it just a little bit, not trying to scoop it up out of there. Now, one other thing I want you to take note of is that on a shot like this out of the light rough, it's not a big shot, so I don't have a lot of momentum. That means that the club's going to get some resistance from the ground because of that sharp angle, and because I don't have a lot of momentum, it's not a big follow-through. So a lot of times you'll see people with this look trying to follow through big on a shot like this. I don't need it. I'm going to go ahead and let the club just pinch into the ground on the way through. Now, it's not something I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to stop my swing. My swing gets stopped by the ground, and again, because it doesn't have that momentum. So now let's go ahead and take a look at some of those uneven lies. You know, that little discussion of light rough and how impact occurs is so important. You do have to understand that the club approaches on that little steeper angle. Now, I was playing with a guy in a tournament, actually. It was kind of an interesting story. Really fine players in a pro tournament. And frankly, this guy was having a great day. He was 4 under par on the day through the 15th hole. Now, during this round, he had hit a couple of chip shots that he got close to the hole, but it looked pretty dodgy. Now, we got to a hole where he hit it into the light rough on the side of the green. And what happened was he made a whole bunch of practice swings, scooping the club right along the ground and sort of brushing the ground a little bit early. Must have made 15 or 20 practice swings, and I was thinking to myself, he better not hit it like that or he's going to miss it. And sure enough, he went ahead, even this fine player, and tried to scoop at it up out of the rough. And he really tipped his hand right there because he missed it and hit it about 3 feet. And he said, "I hate chipping." And he went ahead and took a swat at it. And actually that second one had the angle of approach he needed, and he hit a good shot next to the hole. So even some very fine players don't quite have the concept about how that angle of approach needs to happen. So hopefully we're a little ahead of the game now. Well, we have a different situation here. I've got a downhill lie. Now, to hit this shot successfully, I'm going to need to stand a little bit differently and to swing a little bit differently to get that same impact. You remember I mentioned a minute ago, as the club approaches, it needs to be a few inches above the grass at this point. It mustn't be passing along the ground. Well, now, because the hill is this way, the club would actually have to be higher at that point to achieve the same purpose, to get above the grass at this point. So if I were standing normally, straight up and down, if you will, now clearly the club is going to approach right along the ground, and that's not going to give me the impact that I need. This is a change I would need to make whether it was a clean lie or if it was in the rough. This one's in the rough, so I need to have it coming even a little bit steeper into the ground. Very important to take note of that. To get that good solid contact, I need to have the club coming on a little sharper angle. The way you can think of it, it's almost like a postcard. If I were to take a postcard of a flat lie with someone hitting out of the light rough and I tilt that whole postcard, well, now look what happens is the ground looks like this, so does the swing, and so does the golfer. And that's where I want to talk about the Eiffel Tower. This can always help you on different slopes, is to think of the Eiffel Tower. However the Eiffel Tower would stand, that's how you need to stand. It sets you in a position where your swing can now match the hill. So in this situation, I'm going to stand a little bit more perpendicular to the hill. Now, to do that, I have to stand wide. You can imagine if I were to stand narrow and lean, I'm going to fall right over. So I'm going to go ahead and stand wide so that I can stand like the Eiffel Tower. Now my swing is set to go more up and down the hill. This will help me to achieve that impact that I'm looking for, where the club is coming a little bit more up and down in relation to the world, if you will, but the same in relation to the ground, where it's that few inches above the ground as it approaches. Once I make that stance, it's very important that I feel the club swing up and down the hill as well. I'll really get a sense here that the ball is going to fly out lower, and it will, because when I lean like this, my sand wedge gets turned into a pitching wedge, or my 9-iron might get turned into a 7 or an 8-iron. So the club is going to send the ball out lower. Now, again, as I stand there, I'm going to be able to feel that, and a lot of people will miss this shot, even if they stand correctly, because they feel that loft, and they'll try to scoop it up into the air. So it's very important that I let my swing go up the hill and back down the hill. The down the hill part is the really important one, because the club has to go that way, catching the ball first and then the turf. So the swing is going to go up and down the hill a little bit more than normal. I'm going to feel my wrists just a little bit more to let the club climb up the hill, and then I'm going to feel it swing down the hill as well. Very important as you're getting ready to play this shot to make some practice swings to see that you're brushing the ground after the ball. We never want to see a situation where you're getting ready to play by hitting the ground too early. So standing with the stance wide, Eiffel Tower, leaning well to the left there, and now the swing is going to go up and down the hill. That's going to help me get the impact that I need. Now again, loft is going to play a part here. The ball is going to take out a little low and hot. It will always out of the light rough, but a little extra here, so you really have to play for it. You may need to take your club and lay it open just a tiny bit to get a little extra height. Grab that lob wedge instead of your sand wedge, anything to get that little extra height on it. But again, to get that solid contact, the swing has to match the hill, up and down the hill, and as always, standing like the Eiffel Tower. Well, here we are with the opposite situation, where I'm going up a hill. Now, you remember I said just a minute ago about the postcard, how we're imagining a flat line. If we tilt that postcard one way or the other, it helps us to understand those factors. Well, a minute ago we tilted it on a downhill lie. Now we're going to tilt it the other direction. So all of those same things apply in terms of the Eiffel Tower. It's such a magic little way to remember it. The Eiffel Tower, however it would stand, that's how I need to stand. So I'm going to go ahead and have a wide stance, because again, as I lean to the right like that, a narrow stance isn't going to get it. I'm going to fall over. So a wide stance, standing like the Eiffel Tower. Now, it's also important to match my swing to the hill. So you remember talking about how the club has to be above the grass a certain amount at this point to catch the ball first and then go into the turf. Well, if I were to stand and not be perpendicular to the hill, well, now the club is coming too steep, coming too much into the ground. So in this situation, leaning this way, I've also got to match my swing to the hill. That's going to mean that my swing is going to go down the hill and back up the hill to make that solid contact. Now, it's not going so much up the hill that the club skims the ground. It still pinches into the ground with the handle slightly in front of the ball. That's very important. So again, it's going to be leaning to the right, swing matching the hill. Again, not so much where it matches it perfectly that I'm skimming. It is going to brush into the ground still, just like that. So again, the handle is slightly in front of the ball at impact in relation to the hill. Remember our postcard. I'm tilting it this way, and the hill would be here. The handle is still slightly in front of the ball. That helps me to make my solid contact. Leaning a lot of weight on my right foot, and again, these uphill lies, they're the only lies in this game really where your weight is favoring your right foot big time. So here I am on the right foot there at address, perpendicular to the hill like the Eiffel Tower, swinging down the hill and back up. As always, there's my practice swing going up the hill, making sure I'm brushing the ground in the right place, and then I can give it a go. Now, you remember we talked a minute ago about the height of the shot. On the downhill lie, the club gets de-lofted and the ball comes out lower. Well, now we're adding loft. So if I'm playing a shot from this type of situation, my sand wedge might act a lot more like my lob wedge, where the ball is going to go higher and softer. My 9-iron might act like a pitching wedge. It's not going to run on as long, and I do need to play for this. Watch out for this situation if you have a pin cut close and you're going to try to lob it a little bit where you lay the blade open extra. It's very easy to go right underneath it in this situation. You've already got tons of loft. If you're playing a lob wedge from this type of lie, it's going to be almost like a high lob already. So watch out for trying to lay the blade open any extra. Now this shot can be a challenge. Whenever you have an uneven lie, I want you to remember that the ball is not where it's supposed to be. It's somewhere else, and we have to sort of figure out where is that place, where is it different than it usually is. In this particular situation with the ball above my feet, the ball is farther into the air. It's more up, if you will, and it's a little bit closer to me also. You can almost imagine if the ball were on a cliff, the ball would be right next to me. So the ball is closer to me and more into the air. So what I need to do is I need to stand and swing accordingly to match where that ball is now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some stance changes and some swing changes. Now the first thing I'm going to do, because the ball is closer to me, is I'm going to go ahead and grip down on it just a little bit. The second thing is I'm going to stand a little taller. Remember that ball's a little more up in the air. So let's imagine it's way up in the air like it's up here. Well, you can see I would stand quite tall then. So I'm going to go ahead and stand a little bit taller and grip down on it just a little bit. That's going to help me establish that right distance from it. Now once I do that, I have to go ahead and match my swing to where the ball is, because again the ball's up in the air. Let's exaggerate it again for a second and take a look. If the ball were up here, I would swing right smack around to hit it. And that's what I need to do here also. I need to have my swing go around just a little bit more than normal. Now the trick is here is that the swing goes around on both sides. This is very important because a lot of people miss this shot when they try to make the swing too much like normal. Now what I mean by that is that the swing doesn't usually go around so much. It usually goes a little more up and down. So if I go up and down in this situation though with the ball up in the air, that makes me hit the ground in the wrong place. So what I want to do is I want to feel that the swing goes around just a little bit more than normal, around, back, and through. So I'm not going to go around, back, and then go ahead and make a normal downswing where I let the club swing down. I have to feel almost like a windshield wiper where it's going back and forth like that. Now how do I know if I've made the right changes? I'm going to go ahead and make some practice swings to feel where I'm hitting the ground. If I go ahead and go back and forth correctly, the club will brush the ground a little bit on the way forward. This is very important to see where you're hitting the ground always on every shot. You want to make sure that the adjustments you've made suit where that ball is. So I'm going to try to brush the ground where the ball is. If I don't, if I go ahead and make a swing like this and hit the ground in the wrong place, well, I haven't fashioned my swing correctly for where that ball is. So it's going to be a taller stance, gripping down on it just a little bit, making a couple of practice swings to make sure I'm hitting the ground after the ball, and then I'm ready to go. Now there's one thing you have to watch out for when the ball's above your feet, and that is the direction that the ball's going to fly. The more I hold the club into the air, especially with a lofted club, the more the loft of the club looks the club face off to the left. Now the more lofted it is, the more that happens. If it's a straighter face club like a 7 or 8 iron, it's not going to try to jump left too much. But in this situation, I have a pretty good uphill lie ball above my feet here. If it was way above my feet though with this wedge, I may need to aim well over to the right. So a little experimentation there to see how that factors in. But those are the changes you're going to need to make to hit it solid. Well, here we are with the last of the 4 variations, and that's where the ball is below my feet. Now luckily it's all the opposite changes from when the ball was above my feet. When the ball was above my feet, again, the ball was closer to me and more up in the air. Now the ball is farther from me and more down the hill. So I have to make those stance changes to accommodate that. Remember when I gripped down on the club with the ball above my feet? Well, now I'm going to grip down at the very end. I'm also going to bend my knees a little bit more than extra and bend a little bit more from the waist. Those are the changes I need to make to get that distance down to where the ball is. Once I've made those changes, now I have to make my swing match where the ball is also. When the ball was above my feet, I had to swing around. Well, luckily it's the opposite, up and down, easy to remember. So I'm going to make that swing go up in the air a little bit more than normal and back down into the ground a little bit more than normal. Now remember, this ball's sitting in the light rough, so I do need that little extra pinch into the ground. So just even a dot more up than usual, adding to that, if you will, going up and down so I can go into the ground, getting that good impact. So let's give it a go. Knees flexed a little bit more, bending a little more from the waist, and off I go. Now, as always, when you're getting ready to play these uneven lies, make those practice swings to make sure that you've made the adjustments you need to catch it solid. Now, what happens if I have a combination of elements? Maybe I have a downhill lie here, ball below my feet, and it's facing downhill. Well, just add those factors together. I'll bend my knees a little bit more, bend from the waist, grip down, and if it's a downhill lie also, I'll lean a little bit more to the left. So I have to sort of add those factors if I have a combination. So that's where those practice swings are really going to come in handy to see if you've made the right adjustments. If you're practice swinging, no matter what lie you're on, if you're swinging and catching the ground in the right place, you're ready to hit a good shot.